The following is a training module on how best to get prospects on the phone. This is actually really important to focus on because this is really one of your biggest challenges. It is extremely difficult just to simply get prospects on the phone these days. And so if you have the best product on the market, the best price, the best phone script, you're the most talented salesperson, all that doesn't really do you much good if you can't ever get in front of the prospect or get the prospect on the phone. So the first thing that can often be challenging is just figuring out who to call. Companies today can often be huge. They can be like mazes. It can be unclear who is the right person to connect with and who is the right person to call. So, and just really figuring out from an actual name or phone number standpoint, that can be challenging in itself. And then once you do have that name and that person identified, just simply getting them on the phone can be challenging. A lot of times you're trying to reach decision makers, and the reality is that not only do decision makers often try to avoid phone calls from other companies or from anybody really, but decision makers are often away from their desk. It's very likely that a decision maker is in meetings all day, right? Because whenever a project is going on or something important is going on, meetings are held, and usually the people that approve or make decisions are in a lot of those meetings. So it's not uncommon for a VP or a director or senior business owner, president, to have their calendar where it's just nothing but blocks all day long, and they're in meetings. So which means they're not at their desk. So regardless of how many times you call, they're never going to answer the phone because they're not there. So it's kind of important to visualize that when you're calling some of these very important individuals. Also, if they've been away, even if they are at their desk when you do call, it's likely that they've been away maybe they've been in meetings all morning and they're playing catch up. And if they're busy playing catch up, the last thing they might want to do is answer the phone. So especially if they don't recognize your number, or if they do recognize your number and know that you're a salesperson. So, and then on top of that, they often put a gatekeeper, a receptionist, and an assistant between themselves and you, so that you have to go through somebody. So it's just difficult to get the prospect on the phone. It's not impossible by any means, and this doesn't necessarily mean that you should not use the phone as a sales tool, but it's difficult, and you should know that those obstacles exist, and we'll talk about here today how to minimize those. So, and regarding when you add all that up, whether it's you're getting the prospect's voicemail or you're talking to the gatekeeper, you could spend 80% of your time just trying to get a hold of somebody. So, if you spent 10 hours a week prospecting, you could spend 8 hours of those 10 just grinding it out, getting voicemail, dealing with automated attendants, dealing with gatekeepers, and you might feel like you're wasting your time in those 8 hours, but the reality is hopefully you're taking steps to get one step forward. We'll talk a little bit about how you can do that, but it's part of the grinding activity of phone prospecting, and what you want to do is do the right thing so that you do get on the phone with prospects 20% of the time, 15% of the time, and that you execute well when you're in that range. So let's talk about here today how to improve all those odds and how to get you on the phone with prospects. But before you can figure out how to get the prospect on the other end of the phone, you need to figure out who to call, right? And this can often be challenging because you might have a territory or a list of accounts, a territory in terms of a geography, or a territory in terms of a list of accounts, and you might just see these business names and you're thinking to yourself, I don't even know who to reach out to. And if you really struggle to get past that, then you're not going to get anywhere. But if you can figure out and just sort of get a name and maybe a phone number, that can at least get you going in the right direction. So let's talk about how to do that. And I want to first start out by talking about organizational structures, and this really applies to business selling. You can just kind of skip this if you're selling more to individuals or selling to consumers, but most companies are organized the same way, and they have functional departments, just about all of them, with where you have marketing, you have sales, you have finance, you have IT, operations, HR. There might, as companies get bigger, there's other functional areas, of course, legal, environmental, safety, training, and whatnot. But these are some of the main ones. But the key takeaway here is that it's likely that your product is either used by or purchased by one or two of these departments. Usually, in most cases, there's at least two departments. Usually, one department, there's sort of a primary and a secondary functional area that you can sell into. For example, you might sell financial software, so you might sell that to finance, but IT might also be an influencer or the ultimate decision maker. A lot of IT products impact operations. You might sell something that you can sell to marketing, but you can also sell it to HR at a secondary level. So it's important to know what functional areas you're focused on. And then most organizations from the top down are organized typically in the same way in terms of, you got the C level at the top, VP below that, director below that, manager below that, and at some level below that, then you sort of have the frontline worker. And this is a common structure, and it's important to know what level you should sell to. And the most common sales philosophy is sell top down, or only sell at the top. But some products aren't purchased just at the top, meaning only at the C level. Sometimes you still want to sell at the top, but the director level or the VP level might be the right place for the decision maker for what you sell. It's important to know that. In addition, really the higher up this ladder you get, the less accessible the individuals are, but really the more power that they have. At the lower level, they're more accessible, and often they have valuable information. So it's not horrible to call at lower levels if you fully acknowledge that they're not decision makers and not to spend too much time on them. But you can typically get in and get valuable information. Sometimes you can get a coach at the manager, director level. They might not be a decision maker, but you could establish them as a coach. So there is the saying of top-down selling, but in some ways you can sometimes do a parallel effort with top-down selling and bottom-up selling at the same time. Or sometimes you can do some prospecting or canvassing at the bottom to collect information. So then when you do call at the VP level, you can sound more intelligent. I'm sorry. What a word to missay there. You can sound more intelligent, and you can say something like, I've done some research on your organization. I know this and that and this and that. I've spoken to these three people, and that can warm up a cold call and make you sound more credible, more knowledgeable, and position you for success versus just coming in cold at the top. But that philosophy does actually go against the top-down selling, because you're not necessarily starting at the top, but you can look at it as though you're doing research before you start your top-down selling. But those are some levels. You definitely want to kind of know which level, and then each of these levels is assigned, it falls under those functional areas. So under HR, you typically have VP of HR, Director of HR, HR Manager, Finance, CFO, VP of Finance, Director of Finance. Some of the functional areas have different titles. It just doesn't always go VP, Director, Manager. Sometimes you have a C-level, like sales is an example. Often VP of Sales might be the most senior sales leader. Some organizations do have a Chief Sales Officer, but it's probably more common than not that it's just a VP of Sales, maybe VP of Worldwide Sales. That they report into the CEO or the senior level. This is a visual representation of an organization. If you're a visual individual and you're trying to figure out who should I call, who should I contact, it may help to have a good picture of this in your head, or maybe print this out and put it on the wall so you can kind of circle the actual key people from a title perspective that you're trying to reach. It's important to know that the title, the primary and secondary title or role that you're trying to get into. That can really help when it comes to finding the actual contacts to reach out to. So we're going to talk about a few resources that you can use to actually get the name, get the phone number, get the email address. A good place to start if you have a company CRM in place. You may not, but if the company you work for has a system, a database in place, likely there are lots of contacts already loaded up in there. So that's a good place to start. That's not a revolutionary concept, but it's one worth saying when talking about where to go to find contacts. But I'll tell you, and it's becoming very well known, that one of the best places to go to find out who to call is LinkedIn. LinkedIn, you can do an advanced search. You could put in a company name, a role, see who is currently working at a company in that particular role, get all sorts of information on them. This resource is actually probably better than, even if you have a company CRM that's been loaded up with tons of data, this is actually going to be maybe a better resource of information. I'll tell you why. Because individuals manage their own contact record for the most part. I mean, some people are on LinkedIn and they create an account, they never touch it again for 10 years, right? But most people, when they change jobs, the first thing they do is they update their LinkedIn profile. So what that means is this LinkedIn data is fairly always up to date. Whereas if your CRM, if someone's changed jobs, it's likely that no one's gone through and double checked to make sure their information is up to date. It might be old. So you often call people from your CRM and you often get the reaction of, no, they're no longer with us, especially because in today's day and age, people change jobs every couple of years. That you're not going to run into that as much when you're getting contacts on LinkedIn. So this is one of the best prospecting tools, if not the best, for finding contacts to call at an organization. Another resource to use is maybe a business contact database. So this is typically a third-party service that you can log into and build lists or find contacts. The screenshot here is from a company called LeadFerret. We use LeadFerret a lot, and you can build a list, you can search for contacts, get email addresses. It's a great resource. There's also other providers out there that provide similar services, so maybe you use a couple of these. But there are definitely databases out there that you can subscribe to build a list or to find contact information. Another place to go to get contacts, especially at a senior level, owner, president, executive level, is a company website. So here's an example of a website, and you can go to like the About Us page and often find out who the CEO is, who the executive team is, and so that's a good place, especially when you're selling at the senior level. Google is a great place to go to find contacts. You could do a company search, do a search with the company and the title of the individual you're looking for, and whatnot. So those are some online tools that you can use while you're prospecting. You can also use company resources, on the prospect side to get contacts. For example, you could start with just a front desk number for a company and typically get a gatekeeper to point you in the right direction. A way to phrase it, so meaning you know you need to get into marketing, you know you want to sell at the VP level, but you don't have that individual. You've gone to all those other resources I just told you about, and you can't find the person. Well, call the company and get a gatekeeper on the phone, and you can say something like, hi, and by the way, let me just pause right here. When I say what I'm about to say, I'll often use sort of a friendly, curious inflection to it. So I kind of like say it in kind of a puzzled way. So you might say something like, "Yeah, hello. I'm trying to reach the director of HR. Can you point me in the right direction, please?" And so it doesn't work every time, but this positions you to get more help from a gatekeeper, as opposed to just sounding more like a salesperson and saying, "Please connect me with the director of HR," or "I'm trying to reach the director of HR." They might be a little bit more guarded with that. Another way to get the right person is to name drop. Hi, we're planning on meeting with John Wilson, but would like to connect with the director of HR before we go in that direction. Do you know who we should reach out to? So but the main takeaway here is that a gatekeeper for a company is a great resource to use to find contacts that you need to sell to. Another great resource are contacts that you already know at the company, or that you end up on the phone with that aren't the right person, or really basically at the end of any conversation. So at the end of any, even if whether it's a good conversation or bad, you can always ask someone a question like this: hey, do you know who else it might make sense for me to reach out to on your side, or reach out to? That's something you could say even when you have a good conversation with a prospect. And when you talk to a prospect that's saying they're not interested or the wrong person, you can say something like, "Oh, I see. Well, do you know who the correct person for me to reach out to is?" And so this is an example of getting internal referrals. A contact is referring you to one of their internally to the right person. And something that can help here is just to communicate that you're not going to share their information. You could include that if you want. If you sensed a little hesitation, you could say something like, and Sherry, I definitely, of course, wouldn't say your name when I talk to them, so you don't have to worry about that if that's something that you're uncomfortable with. So those are some resources to figure out who to reach out to. That's step one, right? But once you have that name, the challenge doesn't end there, because as we talked about, it's difficult to get them on the phone. But let's talk about what we can do to get them on the phone. And we already talked a little bit about gatekeepers here. We actually have a full module on how to deal with and get around gatekeepers, so I encourage you to watch that, a similar module to this. But some tactics. Now, I guess one important takeaway here is you could spend up to 50% of your time dealing with gatekeepers when you're trying to get the prospect on the phone. So there are clear challenge in this area, and some things that you can do to minimize that challenge are name dropping, either name dropping someone you've talked to or someone you're planning to talk to. Be prepared for how to handle their objections. Be friendly to the gatekeeper. Try to befriend them. Always, when possible, if you run into a dead end with the gatekeeper, ask them your qualifying questions that you plan to ask the prospect, and get a direct line to the prospect whenever you can. One good way that I've heard of somebody doing this is when they have a gatekeeper on the phone, they may actually just give them a fake number. Like if you know the first common the area code and then the first 3 digits of the phone number for the company, if you know what those are, they'll make up the last 4 and they'll say, "Yeah, I'm trying to reach Mike Smith, but I don't think I have his number written down right. I have 555-555-1438. Is that correct?" And then the gatekeeper, when you present it in that way versus saying what is their phone number, a gatekeeper will often say, "Oh no, it's 1401," and they give you the right number, because it sounds like you already were given the number. Doesn't work every time, but something you can try, and it does work often. If a lot of times, so we talked about dealing with the gatekeeper up to 50% of the time. You could spend another 30% of your prospecting time running into voicemail greeting or voicemail mailboxes. So it's important to have some logic here. Again, we have a training module on voicemail strategy by itself, but here are some quick tips. The primary strategy is to most of the time to not leave a message, and you do this for a couple reasons. One is it saves you time, because if I'm making 100 dials a day and I get 30 to 40 voicemail boxes, and I leave, it takes me a minute to leave a voicemail, I'm basically spending half an hour to 60 minutes of my day leaving voicemail messages. So we hang up a lot, or we recommend that you do. And another important reason why hanging up is powerful, or important, should I say, is that when you hang up, it allows you to call back more frequently or call back quicker. If it's Tuesday morning and I leave you a voicemail message, I will maybe look semi-crazy, stalkerish, ultra-aggressive if I call you back Tuesday afternoon again, right? So I need to pause. I either need to pause for a day, a couple days, or a week. That's up to your style and maybe up to, you know, how the situation. But if it's Tuesday morning and I hang up on your voicemail, I can call you back Tuesday afternoon and get you on the phone and not feel like I'm stalking you, because A, I didn't leave you a voicemail, and I'm assuming that you weren't at your desk, so I'm assuming that I didn't leave you anything to call me back, so I'm calling you back, and I'm still trying to get a hold of you. Versus when I leave you a message, even if I don't say it, there's an implied transfer of responsibility, for meaning you're supposed to call me back next. But so if I don't leave messages, I can call you again and again. I can call you 5 times in one day, and I think that's just perfectly fine, as long as I'm hanging up on your voicemail. So that's kind of what we do, or should be your primary strategy. But at some point, you do want to leave a message, because voicemail can be a way for you to deliver a message to a prospect, especially when they're never answering your phone call. So we say leave a voicemail message every 5 to 10 attempts, and then you want to schedule your call back either in a couple days or in a week out. And then a best practice from that is to follow up every voicemail with an email. And you want to do this for a couple reasons. One is, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but it creates sort of a multi-touch approach. You know, you're leaving a voicemail, then they're getting an email from you. An email is also easier for them to respond to than your voicemail message, meaning they can more quickly respond to hit reply and type you out a response than to write down your phone number and call you back. So you're presenting them with an easier reply back option, and then it's also easier for them to save and archive your information. Even if they don't return your call, you never connect with them, maybe there's something they like and think that maybe down the road I might need that, and it's much easier for them to save your email than for them to write down your information and find a place to save it. So talking about email, this is really important, an important tool to improve your connect rate. And so we already talked about these few points right here. We just talked about them. Creates a multi-touch approach, easier for the prospect to reply, and then easier for the prospect to save your information. You can send emails as part of your prospecting at a couple different times. You could send a pre-call email, before your phone call. So you could send an email out to a prospect if you have their email address, saying, hi, I'm with so and so, and this is this is why I'm reaching out to you, and I'm going to give you a call or whatever. There's lots of different ways to design a pre-call email. But then the other time to send an email, so then you might call them, you try them again and again, then you leave a voicemail. Then after that voicemail, you send them a voicemail follow-up email. And so that's a best practice that improves your connect rate. If you don't have their email address, which can often be the case, you can guess their email address by typically using some of the common email styles that you see listed here. First name dot last name at thecompany.com, first initial last name at thecompany.com. So you can see those common naming conventions there. When you're making a guess, you can put that guess usually in an email checker. There are some email checkers available on the internet, and so you can use one of those. You can also just sort of, one other way is you could go to Google, and if you type asterisk at and then the company domain, you'll often end up on Google pages that Google has scanned that have email addresses for someone in the company. It likely won't be the person you're trying to reach. It might be an executive or someone in procurement. And what you can do is you can look at that email address and look at the style of the naming convention, and then you can copy that with the prospect's name that you do have. So those are some ways to get the email address so that you can send emails to support your prospecting, so that you can improve your connect rate. But at the end of the day, sometimes we might call again and again and again. We've left a bunch of voicemails. We've sent emails, and we're just still not getting anywhere. So what we want to do at this moment is we want to implement vertical organizational movement. And so this is basically moving up and down that functional department that we're selling into. So just to kind of give you a visual representation of this. So if we're trying to reach the VP level of the functional area that we're trying to reach and we can't get a hold of them, then we can move on to call it the C level. If somebody's not answering your call their boss. Nothing wrong with that at all, as long as you sort of handle it in the right way. Actually, I mean, it's not even handling in the right way. You're calling them, they're not returning your call. Okay, well, what else am I going to do? You move up the chain, no big deal. There's nothing wrong with that at all, actually. You could also move down, move below them. So you can see here, this improves your connect rate, right? So if we just call that one person, and all of these levels it's going to take time to get a hold of all three of these people, right? But when we're trying to get a hold of three people, that improves our odds of getting in versus calling one. And it just doesn't stop with three people, because we can do horizontal movement as well. And this is basically moving from one functional department to another. So for example, if our primary department is trying to reach IT, we might know that operations usually uses the product that we sell as well, and they're a secondary department that we can reach out to. So if we can't get our contact in any of our contacts in IT, then we move on to operations. And so if we go back to this sort of chart here, you know that the key person that we're trying to reach is the VP of IT. Can't get a hold of them. Well, you know what? We're doing horizontal and vertical movement, and voila, look at that. A whole bunch of other people that we can reach. And so that greatly, if our odds of getting a hold of one person is a certain rate, by adding a bunch more people to that, we improve our odds of being able to get in and get a hold of somebody, and so on. So that's a way to improve your odds of getting in. Now, part of getting a hold of someone is to use a call cadence, and cadence means a rhythm. And so this is a rhythm to our calling. So how often are we calling? How frequent are we calling? And so one system that we've developed is sort of 3 rounds. And so round 1 it could start with a pre-call email, an email to your prospect. So this could be to the VP of IT according to the previous chart. And we send that email, and then we follow up that email at some point with a phone call. And if we get a hold of them, then we're done, right? Because we got a hold of them. But if we don't, then we leave our voicemail message number 1. And I say number 1 because it's written in a certain way, and you could see there's also a voicemail 2 and a voicemail 3. Because I'll get to that in round 2. But voicemail number 1 we leave, then we follow up with voicemail follow-up email number 1, and then we pause. Pause for whatever time period fits your style. Pause for a day, 2 days, 1 week. When that's done, we begin round 2. And now we're calling without leaving a voicemail. We're calling 5 to 10 times very frequently, right? So we're not leaving a voicemail, so we might be calling, this might be over a period of a couple days. Could be a week or so. And then after you get to either 10 calls or 2 weeks, whatever comes first, then we leave voicemail 2. And it says number 2 because it's a slightly different message. And so now, and then we follow up voicemail 2 with voicemail follow-up email number 2, which is a slightly different follow-up email message. And by using different voicemails and different follow-up emails, we're using this method to share new and different information with our prospect. So not only are we dealing with repetitive hits, but we're also sharing different information. So if they were to read everything and hear everything, they're hearing a bigger message, hopefully educating them more. And then you pause again. After round 2, then this is when we begin to decide to move laterally and horizontally. So this is when we start to call above or below or into other departments. When we find a new contact to call, then we begin that new contact on round 1. And so then we're going through the beginning of this process with that new contact. But with the existing contact, we move on to round 3. It's similar to round 2, but we have slightly different messaging. And at the end of round 3, you could potentially close the contact or put them on a very low, on a lower level, maybe stay in contact drip campaign, but really take them off of your radar from doing a lot of attempts. The reason why is that we likely have reached out to them a number of times. We've left them messages, we've sent them emails, and if we haven't heard anything, then it just might be time to move on. And your time's very valuable, so you might not want to spend it too much on that one prospect. And that's pretty much it. Like I said, it's extremely difficult to get prospects on the phone in the world we live in. It's noisy. There's competition, both competition from other salespeople, competition from um, internal communications, internal departments, trying to also grab your prospect's attention. But there is using the phone can play a role in your sales strategy, and there are things that you can use to improve your connect rate. And so the key thing is to having the right contacts to reach out to, and you can use resources like LinkedIn, your CRM, Google, company website, business contact databases to find the right people to reach out to. Once you're then prospecting them, be prepared to get around the gatekeepers that are between them and you. Use a mix of an aggressive, persistent call cadence, a voicemail strategy that includes email, and create that multi-touch approach. And when you can't get a hold of someone, use vertical and horizontal organizational movement to find other people to reach out to as well. Those small changes can be done by a person of any skill level, any level of experience, and they can all have a positive impact on you getting on the phone with prospects. Hope that helps. Good luck and happy hunting.
Listeners,